Hi, everybody. This is S.J. Thomason with Christian-Apologist.com, and we're going to talk today about a very important question. It was a question that was asked in the 1800s by Friedrich Nietzsche. He wanted to know, if God is dead, have we killed him? And I will make the case that no, God is not dead. God is very much alive. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to open this up to people to come in here and discuss this with me. And so I see I've got some people in the chat already. I want to say hi to all of you. I see Digital Gnosis and Jesse Camping and Hellbound Heathen and Mr. Parker. And so it's good to see everybody here. So what I'm going to do is let me just go ahead and get the link to have other people join me if you're interested. So if you're interested, let me just get an invite. Here we go. I've got my invite. I'm going to go ahead and just pop this right into the stream. And so you can join me if you want. Whoops, trying to get that in there. Okay, so that is the link if you want to come join me in this stream. And so the big evidence that I have to show that God is not dead is Jesus Christ and his resurrection. And it's pretty exciting. So if you're a new one here, you're a newbie, and you haven't investigated the evidence for the resurrection, I will be excited to tell you there's tons of evidence for the resurrection. And I got Mr. Parker here, and I've got Nate Dogg. We got, let me just add them in. Okay, we've got that, add. Okay, so I've got a few people here. So thank you, Mr. Parker and Nathan. It's always good to see you guys. Hi. All right, so do you guys want to introduce yourselves in case other people haven't met you yet? I know both of you have been on my channel before. So why don't you go ahead and share a little info about yourself?
Do you want to go, Mr. Parker? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That's fine. I'm an atheist. I'm very active online. I join live streams whenever. And, this is an interesting topic, I guess, which is why I guess I joined.
Okay, good. And then Nate.
Yeah, I'm like a weird person who believes all sorts of crazy things. I started as a Christian. I mean, like everyone probably knows me on here. Like I was on the live stream like a few days ago. I started as a Christian and now I'm not, basically. Or I am a Christian, but not in a way that like someone like you would probably call a Christian, SJ, I guess.
So would you call yourself a cultural Christian?
Not cultural, no. I just think it means something different. Like I essentially almost fully accept naturalism, for example, and that's not something that I think you would.
Interesting. Okay, so I've got some diversity in here. So that's pretty interesting. So well, I'll just say, I would say that it is for the audience in case you guys are joining. So I just opened this up to a lot of people, and so we could make some arguments for or against the existence of God. So let me ask you two, each of you could tell me, what do you think are the most powerful arguments that the atheist or agnostic camp can come up with against God, saying God does not exist? What do you think is the most powerful?
I guess it would depend on what kind of conversation you're having with a person. Like certain arguments can be quite useful if they're giving you, if they're saying like intelligent design is right, then you can use.
I blew my ears out.
Ooh.
I don't really know. I know a lot of arguments, but I don't know what's probably the best one.
Okay. Nathan, I'll actually tell you what I think is the best argument for God. I mean, the best argument for God to me is Jesus's resurrection, and so I would say just looking at the Bible, realizing he fulfilled 330 Old Testament prophecies, ones like Isaiah 53 and Psalm 22 and Zechariah 12:10 and Zechariah 9:9, and I could go on, and you don't want me to do that, but it's really interesting that here's a humble carpenter in a very obscure part of the world 2,000 years ago, who's basically now just about everybody knows who he is, whether or not people follow him. Just about everybody on this world knows who he is. Now I've got exceptions on the Sentinel Island, for example, but we've got somebody who's really changed the world from such humble roots. And I think that in itself lends credence to us making the assertion that God is behind all of this. We could go, you both, I'm sure, are very familiar with the minimal facts arguments and all of the other arguments supporting Jesus, and even extra biblical arguments if we just looked at those alone. So I would just say that's an issue. Oh wait, so mic issues. So Digital Gnosis, you have microphone issues.
Fixed now. I had because I've got a laptop which is running Linux, and so all the device drivers and things are different from my usual setup. And so as Mr. Parker started speaking, then I just got absolutely blasted in the ears from my computer freaking out.
I'm sorry.
So I want to ask you guys now, Nate, I know you're in your 20s, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You're in your 20s. Mr. Parker, what age group or what area? You don't have to say exactly what age if you don't want to, but I'm just curious.
Below 18, I guess, like young person, basically.
You're under 18?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you might be even my son's age. I have a 14-year-old and a 15-year-old. So
I'm a little older, but
you're a little older than that. Okay. So you're somewhere between 16 and 17. So that's interesting. So actually you're at one of those ages that I think people do question beliefs, and you start to question beliefs, and you start to say to yourself, are my parents right? Did my parents raise me in the right way? Am I, like if you're raised in the Christian faith, you might say, why am I going to church? What is this all about? And a lot of people, as we know, a lot of people, once they enter college, end up rejecting the faith. And then a lot of them end up coming back years later. So, and I never rejected God, but I certainly had my doubts about the Catholic faith when I was in my early 20s. And so actually even longer than that. So 20s, 30s, it went on for a while. And I was curious about whether or not Jesus resurrected. I wasn't curious enough to look into the evidence. So I spent all these years thinking that the Eastern faiths could have been superior. So I was in that place. And then in my early 40s, God started becoming very obvious to me. And that's what brought me to Christianity, is spiritual experiences. And so I can say that. So Nate, you just changed out your picture, it looks like, here.
Yeah, I did, because I've not got a camera linked up on the laptop that I'm on either. So yeah, I guess maybe it humanizes me a bit more. So I don't know. Yeah,
because Mr. Parker, you look like that's like a little donut or something.
It's supposed to be two black holes merging, and I like the picture a lot.
Oh, is it outer space?
Yeah, it's a simulation.
Oh, cool.
Picture.
Okay, I didn't even know that. That's neat. Yeah. So I was just spending my day today, and speaking of looking into evidence that's in science, I spent my morning, I bought a few years ago, I bought this biology textbook that I found was the most widely most used in colleges, the most popular biology textbook. So I bought this one, and I've looked into it a little bit, but then today I made this little pledge to myself. I'm going to read it from front to back, because I've been away from biology for over 30 years, which is a pretty long time. And so actually, I don't think it's quite over. Yeah, it's a while. I've been away from the sciences. And so I thought I was going to go back and take a look at what it has to explain. And so I can say, just by looking at the cell and the composition of the cell and the engines behind all of the things that are going on here, I would say that itself would lead me to believe that there must be a higher power coding all of this information. And so.
But what's your thinking there, SJ? So there's two lines of thought as I see it. One of them would be to say, well, in biological organisms, we see means fitted to ends, in the same way as we see the products of human minds, like cars or watches or whatever, are means fitted to ends. And so like effects have like causes. And so biology must be the product of a mind. That'd be one argument. And the other one, sometimes I see, Christian apologists and stuff going for, is saying that the DNA is informational code, and you tweet it like it's a language. So there must be someone behind a language. And would you go with both of them, or is there one in particular that you think is stronger? Or
yeah, I think the language, I mean, I love that argument. I think John Lennox was the one where I first heard it. Professor John Lennox, who's out of your area, actually. And so he talks a lot about, he said, if you went to the beach and you saw the words, "I love you" written in the sand, you would assume that a mind's behind it. And so then you look at double strands, basically, of DNA, and you look at these over 3 billion nucleotides, well organized, sequenced. You wonder if these nucleotides are so sequenced in such a perfect way to lend themselves to this information. You have to say that there must be some coder behind this code. It's otherwise you're basically trying to say there's no mind behind this very intense, very detailed information that's within us. And so I just think it seems logical that it follows to me that there must be a coder.
Well, I mean, I think the problem, and this is a problem that even so like Saigot, who obviously knows more about the biology on this than me, but he made a video about DNA being a language, and in that he didn't really answer. So that the problem is with saying that it's a language is what we mean by a language. So like for example, I'd say for something to be a language is it's like represented by a mind intentionally. So like if I say the words "the snow is white," they stand for something. Like it stands for the snow and the snow being white. And I can do the same with DNA. I can say like I can represent adenine with an A, I can represent thymine with a T, and I can make a language that stands for it. But the problem is that in a biological system, there isn't like like the protein that's encoding or decoding or whatever's going on. It's all syntactic chemical translations. There isn't like the protein doesn't sit there and as it reads along, it goes, oh, okay, I'm representing A in my mind now, so I'll do this. It's literally just like syntactic translations along. And so to use language in that sense is a misrepresentation. And I think, or maybe not a misrepresentation, I don't mean it in like a harsh way, but like if we were arguing about minds and souls and things, I think you'd want to reject like a functionalist position, which would say a mind is something which just maps inputs to outputs because there's like something it's like to be a mind. So but then it'd be inconsistent to like reject the functionalist on one hand and then say like DNA is a language because a protein zipping along and translating chemical symbols counts as like a mind. So yeah.
Well, I'll say how the biology textbook I was just reading today would have explained that. They actually talked a lot about how the letters themselves, or the A, C, G, and T, how they're organized. And they said it's kind of like this idea of rat versus art versus tar. You've got those are same three letters, but they mean much different things. And they said the same thing applies to our DNA, the way that it's organized and sequenced. And so I don't know if that's kind of explains it, but I think that's how it was explained in the book, which I thought was pretty compelling.
But the problem, so like even to use the term language, like, so it's like different senses of the word, right? So this is like, and this is where like philosophy is an important mediator, because we're going beyond biology to talk about whether or not DNA is a language.
Yeah, I don't really use the word language. I know Saigot might have used that. That's actually what's used in the book that I'm reading as well. But the book also refers to it as code, and I think that's sort of a better way to describe it to me that might address your issue.
Well, I think it's that we might use that word with different senses, though. So, for example,
but the bottom line is, no matter what we use the word, it's that it's organized in sequence. So there's information that's organized in sequence. That's the bottom line. It doesn't matter how we use the word. It's organized in sequenced information.
But information would be, so that'd be a different thing from saying there's semantic content or semiotic content there. So like semantic content would be like, I'm thinking of London, and that thought has like intentionality. It's about the place London, and I can like make a proposition about that, and it represents and stands for something. But I can even think about DNA in language. Like I can think about A, T, C, and G, and I have a representation of that in my mind. But in that process in itself, it is just chemicals translating themselves. And now like you can say there's information in that, but like there's information in like everything, and then you can like represent that with a particular model or map of whatever's there in reality. Like, so I just think I think thinking about it in that way sort of relies on equivocating on terms in a way that doesn't quite sort of
see. I just think, and I think we might be just going like, this is far down a rabbit hole. It's not really
sure.
Me. I mean, we can just keep going back and forth, and I'm just saying that the bottom line is, I'm looking at the chat, like Hellbound Heathen says, the letters represent the chemical building blocks that we assign them. That's true. And Jesse says, right, and it is simply described as a code or a language. So it's just a way that we try to understand or make sense of the DNA that we're observing. And so how it's patterned together, a sequence, that's the
but then to go a step, so then are you saying that the way and the complexity that these means seem to be fitted to ends is similar to the way that products of mind, like watches and things, are means fitted to ends? Like effects have like causes. So the cause of these means fitted to ends must be a mind. Is that sort of where you're going.
I think it's reasonable to say that a mind must be behind that sort of complexity inside of a cell. And so I think if you look at just genetic code and how it's all common to life on this world, I think that there must, I mean, just this idea of genetic code, there must be some sort of mind behind this. And so it just seems reasonable. But I mean, those of you now, if you look at the cosmological argument and you look at that kind of thing, have you two both thought about that and this idea that William Lane Craig puts forth with everything that begins to exist has a cause, the universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. The cause must be timeless, immaterial, and intentional, and then that kind of points to a God.
I think with William Craig's whole point of his argument is it has propositions that seem rational, but they have built-in assumptions inside them automatically. Like the first one, I think, is what everything has a cause, right? Or is that? I
yeah, everything that begins to exist has a cause.
Which is already called into question once we talk about the universe and time and what it means and its complexity. Really, it's very hard to prove such ideas that everything has a cause.
Everything that begins to exist has a cause. You have to clarify that. So
okay.
That's what he's saying.
Because if it was everything, then he couldn't have the get out.
Well, then you'd have to say that God has a cause, and God is the cause. So the buck stops with God, essentially. So if you look at infinite regress of time, and you go back 13.8 billion years, and you go to, okay, well, what contributed to is inflation? Oh, Jesse Camping's jumping in here, so we're going to have two Christians in here.
Hey, Jesse.
Hey, Jesse, you've got yourself on mute. So God exists over here, says God is dead in the minds of those who have rejected salvation in favor of lust. I know that that's not something that a lot of people who are atheists will agree with.
No.
Well, if God desires that all should be saved, it would be weird that lust would be more powerful than the desires of God. I just think when you start going down that route, like, firstly, it like completely rejects the ethics of Jesus and the way he deals with people, and then secondly, like, it just doesn't match up to like reality or the experiences of people who don't believe. So.
Yeah, I want to say so. Jesse, did you want to? I don't know if you want to get your microphone and say hello. Can you do that? I don't know if you're somehow locked in mute here.
There we go. Yeah, it took a while for my mic to turn on. I kind of missed a bit there, so I'll just sit back until I can chime in again. Okay. Okay.
Well, I was talking about a couple of arguments. You know what another argument is for God that some people like to make is they like to talk about. I think as I said before, I think the most compelling argument for God is Jesus and the resurrection. But I do think there's a lot of scientific arguments that support God. But I think there's also things like the moral argument. That's one of my favorites to discuss. So this idea that we have objective morality, and where did it come from?
Yeah, for sure.
Had you wanted to talk? Sorry, at the start when you were saying with like, is God dead? Like, what was the main kind of topic that you wanted to sort of focus on in this video? Because I feel like I might have derailed it a bit with the design argument.
Oh, no, I don't think you did. I'll say with atheists, some of the atheists who've talked about the design argument, they find that one to be one of the most compelling arguments. Even people like Christopher Hitchens, who's sort of a famous atheist, has said that the design argument seems to be the one that's really compelling. And then you get to the arguments, even with the Earth in its sort of Goldilocks zone and having these over 10 habitable zones that Hugh Ross has pointed out in his books, and looking at the conditions that we have here and how there's nothing quite like this on any other planets we've observed. No other planet has more than 2 habitable zones, and and we need at least these 10 that we have to be capable to sustain advanced life. And so I think that there's a lot of evidence that is some of these famous scientists have even pointed out that it seems like somebody's what they call monkeying with the numbers out there in space. So I think we could start with space. We could start with time and matter and see that could point us towards an omniscient force or an intentional force. And then I think if you want to identify the characteristics of what that being is like, then you can come down to Jesus and the manifestation of the Word.
Do you guys not believe in a causality of the universe?
What do you mean, Jesse? Sorry, do you mean like causal determinism in like a physical sense? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I do believe in causal determinism of a physical sense. There are some things in the universe that I'm not necessarily sure of the nature of causation for. So, like, you know, like the random decay of like a radioactive particle or whatever. Like, I don't really understand that. I don't understand how randomness would work. But certainly, I believe in like almost everything pretty much being causally determined. Yeah.
So that would take you right back to a beginning, right?
Not necessarily. It could do if an actual infinity is impossible, then it would do. Yeah.
Well, I think infinity has been pretty well gone over as a paradox. No.
I mean, so if I asked you, for example, for how long will you be praising God in heaven for?
Okay, so that's something
How
outside of
many
our
years?
time. That's out of our time, right?
Well, it's the fact that this would be like a tensed fact about the future, though. So about the future, if we'd ask for how many praises will you say to God in the future in heaven?
Well, in heaven is out of our time, so that's not something that we can determine, right? It's outside of what we understand. Is
Well,
that
not.
not?
I mean, I think the answer for the Christian would be that it's an infinite future with God. You know,
Yeah, yes, you're right. Yeah, that's
so
what we imagine. Sure.
but I think then that kind of defeats to say that it would be impossible to have an infinity.
Well, we have time. There's no time there. This is a creation in time, if to put it in one way, I guess.
Yeah, I understand. So converse content, the way that so I'm not going to play the game. I'm going to steelman the way William Lane Craig would say, well, it's not symmetrical because you're talking about the future. It's always a potential infinite into the future. It's a potential infinite into the past. I don't think the symmetry breaker works. But the point is, I think that for all we know, there could be an infinite contingent past. Like I basically think the reason I'd go down that line of questioning is not because I think it's exactly true, but it's just to try and because initially, like, I think all your defenses are kind of up about the suggestion of that there could be an infinite past. But I think when we really start thinking about these things, like, we don't have good enough reasons to really reject it. Like, I just don't think we know enough to say that there isn't like an infinite contingent past, you know, like a finite amount of matter arranged over an infinite amount of time would lead to every possible arrangement, like Hume argues, or I just don't know enough about that, I would say.
I understand how you get to Hume, but I still think that we have BGV theory or BVG still says there's a beginning, and irregardless of multiverse, it's still a beginning of time. And I think accepting all causality, if you accept it, I think you have to accept an absolute as well. And I like that what Converse says, future infinite is different from past infinite. That's
so when I've spoke to people who understand physics, I think the theory of time that Craig's type of argument is predicated on is like an A theory presentism, which is rejected by contemporary physics. So if we're going to argue from contemporary physics back to a beginning, it doesn't work in the way that Craig wants it to, because the way that space-time works out in contemporary physics is like a 4-unit vector. So if you think of like a graph with x, y, and z coordinates, and then you've got an additional axis of time, and that's basically the way that physics conceives of reality. So then that like the beginning point isn't quite what Craig kind of means it is. It's just this kind of point in space-time. And it's like when I spoke to someone who's done a physics degree, they said it's sort of like thinking of the edge of something. It's not so much like thinking of a beginning as it is like the edge of reality. Which then a contingency argument would be stronger, but I don't think Craig's one works.
Yeah, let me kind of talk about that for a second, because here's what it really is. Here's what's really going on here. This is what a Christian would propose. We'd propose that God is eternally existent. He's an eternal being, and that the universe as we know it, it started in its growth phase basically 13.8 billion years ago. And so what was prior to that was still time, but it's not the same kind of time as we know it, that this on this linear path. And so it's very difficult for us to really grasp what could be present before that. And I think C.S. Lewis said it really well in his book, Great Divorce. He said, we can't understand time and place until we're beyond both. And so we really can't, we can't grasp what it would be like prior to this beginning of this universe, the start of inflation and expansion rate.
So I know physics kind of well, and especially cosmology. I've read a couple of books by Stephen Hawking and many other physicists online. How they describe time as you get farther back, 13.8 billion years, is that we don't have a definite idea of when everything started to do everything. But many theories mostly don't have a idea of like an edge to the beginning of time. Rather, it comes to this curvature where there is no definite point of time. It's like a cone of some sort. Like as the cone as far as you back or up, I guess, on the cone, you get narrower and narrower. But as you get to the top of the cone, you don't have a definite point exactly. It just, if you like cut the top off, you get like a half a circle, and you wouldn't find a definite point. That's how it's been described in many theories I've read.
Yeah, well, Hawking calls it imaginary time, and he realized. See, here's the thing: if you're looking at how everything began, if you go back, there's this start date, and people have estimated it could be, like you said, it's sometimes they've said 14 billion, sometimes they've said 15 billion. There is not a definite estimate, but they have this thing where it started expanding and then it keeps going faster and faster, and so there's an assumption that the rate of expansion also has been increasing as it's been going, and so. And the reason they've been able to measure that out is they've actually looked at galaxies and movements between that sort of thing and tried to figure that out. It'd be cool to have somebody like, and I'm trying to get her, Sarah Selviander, on here, because she's a person who studies that sort of thing, and she'd probably explain it pretty well.
Yeah, I think if you watch Sean Carroll's debate with William Lane Craig, it basically highlights all the ways that Craig is completely out of step with modern physics in his theory of time that his argument rests on.
See, I just think that if we just look at, we have to just look at the universe. We believe had this particular universe had a time when it wasn't quite like this at all. It was, teenier than the size of a pinhead. So, really little teeny thing just all of a sudden began and came out. So it's interesting. I want to mention something. Box of Stars says, for an all-powerful God, this is a good design. See, it's like saying, just because the house has a crack in the tile in the bathroom must mean that nobody built it. That's the argument that I get from Box of Stars. So, the designer has a great sense of humor.
This is starting to get over my head, SJ. There's a fella called Elephant Philosophy. I'd like you to get him on here. And
Elephant Philosophy?
Yeah.
Where did I hear? I just heard of that person. I just heard of that, and I'm trying to remember who. Was it you who told me, or somebody told me to? Okay.
I don't know. I just think he's just fantastic with this philosophy, and he's a theist too. So, but he goes over every argument that philosophers have made. Kant.
Every argument ever.
No, not every argument, but all the ones that are brought up. That's
yeah.
all.
I think, I would say my favorite argument, and we were talking about, like, it's obviously I'm not a scientist. This is over my head to be talking about what's going on in outer space and those sorts of things too. But I do think that for just everyone can come to the understanding of Jesus Christ and the resurrection. And like St. Paul said, if the resurrection didn't occur, then we have nothing to stand on. We've got nothing, essentially. And so I want to open this up. I just put the StreamYard link in there. I know I've got some people who've been on my channel, but somebody just jumped in here. Let me just see who that is. Gotta move the screen so I can see. Okay. So, so we've got, Deconverted Man is coming in here. Hi, Dan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know what time it is. It's lobster time.
You guys are crazy. So last time I opened this up last time, and so I didn't get you on here at the same. I don't know if I've had all of you. Do you guys want to just sort of introduce yourselves to the audience in case people don't know who you are? For all of you, actually. So Mr. Parker and Nate, they kind of did a little brief introduction, but if you want to say a little bit more, that's great. And then Jesse and Dan.
I'm just a guy who follows stuff. That's all. Thanks.
Okay. Now, I want to ask you: are we talking? Just out of curiosity, I put this tweet out there today, and I said, "Which state, U.S. state, are you glad you're not living in?" And I got some responses already. But I had people who are not from the United States tweeting that they're just glad they don't live in the United States. I'm like, oh man, that's tough. I think Jesse, you're from Canada, aren't you?
Yeah, from Canada, near Edmonton.
So I know, and I think Mr. Parker and Deacon Verdeman, are you guys both in the United States?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then we have Nate, and you're from the UK, right? So.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I'd muted myself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's yeah. I opened this up. Digital Hammurabi, you guys are welcome to come in here too. Might as well add some more atheists and Veckel. I gotta get. We need your help, Veckel.
Oh no. No.
Yeah, Veckel, come on.
To be fair, the last time, so I was in a conversation with some quite unintelligent Christians, but Veckel came in and he was saying, let's actually like listen to other people's, like he was actually, I think he's, even though we disagree, I appreciate like his approach to discussion and that he's willing to listen to other people who think different things and stuff. So
was that the one where you were on? Was this Praise I Am's channel?
It was that.
I think I heard some of that. Yeah, I did.
You did, because you thought I was drunk. I was very frustrated.
That was actually no, because I was just trying to give you an excuse for why. Like,
no, I apologized afterwards, but like that, I don't know. That was they're a very strange group of people.
That was the glue episode, was it?
Yeah, that was the glue episode where they said that that evolution isn't true because the moths were glued to trees, which I don't really understand how that works.
Oh, Veckel's coming in.
I heard someone calling for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Sentinel says he wishes he could join, but he's in a Muslim chat right now.
Allah Akbar.
Escape, Rob.
It's a trap.
I find, actually, I'll tell you what. So I find these Muslims, somehow I've been connected with Reformed Boy, who's, he did a debate. Which one of you guys did? He didn't debate any of you guys. Reformed Boy is on, what is he called? I think he's a Calvinist, but he somehow has been reading up on the Muslim faith. And so he keeps trying to get me into these debates with these Muslims. And I'm like, I don't want to debate a Muslim. I know nothing about their faith, apparently.
It's an explosive conversation.
Explosive. No, because what they'll do, and this is why I think it's not a good idea to try to debate other religions unless you're really familiar with that, is because somebody sent me a link to a Hindu on YouTube, and she was basically saying that the whole Bible, the New Testament, was written hundreds and hundreds of years after. And I thought, has she not even read Paul? And I mean, what's going on here? And it was such a mischaracterization of everything we believe. She had a bunch of different facts non-facts that she was coming up with. And so I thought to myself, okay, this is why I don't go on and sort of dispute the Vedas or start talking about their stuff, because she has a very shallow understanding of Christianity, just as I would of her faith.
That's very fair. Yeah, I try to do the same thing with regard to Islam. I know some of the talking points, but not enough to hold my own in the debate. So, yeah, I would definitely probably quickly decline if I were to be asked to debate a Muslim on the text. So
I wanted to
you go.
Basically, I came just to say the one thing. Well, the Box of Stars was basically asking this question about design. The question is properly, or better properly formatted, that if God, or if the designer is a perfect one, then you would expect a perfect design we don't have a perfect design, therefore it's not a perfect designer.
Oh gosh, I've never liked that argument. That is such a terrible argument.
I think, yeah, because it's
Why?
one of those things where we have to understand
It's
what our
terrible.
purpose is. What's
Yeah,
our
But
purpose?
why?
No, it's just
It's
understanding
terrible.
what perfect is.
Exactly. That's
Why,
what it
why do you
starts. I
think
mean,
it's terrible though, Vekel? Like what
because
reason?
because
Wow.
it's what the one who's bringing up that argument is trying to hijack what they believe uh, perfect is, and try to use that as the basis for determining what's perfect objectively. You can't do that. And how do you
What do you
know
think?
that?
So
How,
tell me,
how do you know that what the way things God create? First of all, something that's being made perfect does not mean that it cannot change. It just means that it's complete. It's at its point of completion there, uh, and it's designed for this purpose, and it's met that requirement. It's met that standard. But that doesn't mean that it can't change afterwards, though. You see? So that's all that it means. It just simply means that it's at a point of completion, at a
Uh,
stopping point where it's not continuing to progress to
and,
change into something else or to evolve into something better.
and
And I,
that version of perfect is according to you.
I don't see anywhere
No,
where it
no,
says
because
the
there's
world's
other
perfect.
ways. Well, depending on the context of how you're using the word perfect, depends on how you're using it. If you're talking about
Yeah.
something perfect, meaning like in a moral sense, meaning that uh, you know, they're perfect in regards to they can't sin or, everything they do is perfect. That's one way. But if you're talking about creation, again, that doesn't mean there's nothing in the Bible who said that the way God created everything, it couldn't be altered or changed in some way. It just simply means that it came to a point of completion. That's all it means.
Well, plus, he didn't say, and it's perfect. He said, and it's good. Now, if in the Bible it
No,
said, and it's perfect after he made
but,
everything,
but
then we'd have.
Right.
you gotta ask, what was the thought process of putting the entertainment zone next to the waste disposal area?
I've heard that question. I've heard that before.
Just saying, like,
What are you doing down
Well,
there?
what would you have done? Well, what would you have done? Would you
Well, you
put it
don't
on
need to
in
make
your
it at
head?
all. It doesn't have to even be that
Why
way.
not?
You could have made it such that you don't even need to process anything. You could have been solar powered. You don't. In fact, you could have
Yeah,
made
but
it
you
so
be
that
complaining
energy
about that.
doesn't need to even exist. Like
No,
you could have
you
made
be
it in any other way that you know. It doesn't have to be anything like this. That's the thing.
no, you guys would be complaining about that if had God had done it that way too. So come on now.
well, how
No,
about this then,
Yeah,
Vekel?
you
How
no.
yes
about
you would.
in
Yes you would.
in
Stop
heaven,
lying.
Vekel?
You would. Come on now.
Vekel, wait though. So in heaven, do you believe there will be bone cancer in babies?
They'll be built what?
Do you believe there'll be bone cancer in babies in heaven?
Bone cancer in babies?
Yeah, in heaven. Do you think that will be the case?
No, I have no belief that would be the case in heaven.
So, and do you think that that is better than the current state of affairs, where babies do get bone cancer?
Yes, it's
So God
better to
can,
be in a world where there is no bone cancer, babies are not dying, there's no atheists. Yeah.
but so you do believe though that God can bring about a state of affairs where
You
there
didn't
isn't.
hear how just slip that little thing in there, little nugget in there.
Yeah, it'd be a perfect world would have no atheists in it, but hey, can't have
But
everything, right? Can't have. But anyway, yeah,
so you do believe that God can bring about a more perfect state of affairs than currently is.
well, the Bible says that there will be no. He will wipe away all tears. So, and the body will be incorruptible. So I presume that also includes that there will be no physical ailments in heaven. So, which
All right,
includes
yeah.
AIDS, cancer,
All right.
So
coronavirus, all that other
Okay.
type of stuff.
That actually, I'll ask one more question, then I'll go. Okay, about the
Yeah, I'm on my
body
break,
thing.
by the way, so I won't be able to stay too long.
The body thing. Like Jesus supposedly went beamed up into heaven with his body. Like, how does that work?
And talk to God.
It doesn't
See, if you-
respond back. No
when you-
answer.
You don't.
When-
You got the wrong number.
I've tried all the numbers. So
Well, you need to leave Straight Talk and use maybe
you-
Verizon or something.
I know. Look,
Okay. All right. Go ahead. Sorry.
but yeah, so there's no answer to that. Got it. All right.
I would think, let me just say what I would think as far as the
All right,
God of
bye, everybody.
God who has the, whoops!
Take
Oh,
care.
we just lost him. The God who has the power to create the universe would also have the power, obviously, to raise a man from the dead. I mean, he's the stuff that he's capable of doing is stuff we can't even comprehend in our little
Right.
limited minds in this third rock from the sun and the Milky Way obscure galaxy.
But the
I want
question, I
to say
suppose,
hi
is
to Converse.
oh yeah, sorry, you say hi to.
So Converse, I don't know if you want to just say hi real quick. You just added you in. We got another Christian here in the house.
Converse, welcome to the room. Maybe he's away from his mic temporarily.
You might have moved away. Okay. So I'm sorry. So Nate, you want to?
Yeah, so I was just going to say, but the question is whether, God is powerful enough to make a better state of affairs, a more perfect state of affairs than we find ourselves in now. And it seems that you believe he is, but then you have to sort of give good enough, I think just kind of dismissing the atheist's objections of of the world not appearing to be the product of a perfect mind, and then saying, well, the God could do it, but he's all good, but he doesn't actually want to do it. You've just got to suffer your entire life in this imperfect state of affairs. And then
What's wrong with that?
Well, what's wrong with it is that
Yeah.
firstly, it seems morally wrong to bring people into the world. No, that's not my full sentence. People into the world who don't have the capacity to understand the full picture, the products of their environment, with limited knowledge of the state of affairs, people who can't form the belief that would save them when they're going to go to hell forever without forming that belief.
Yes.
There's all sorts of issues.
Well, let me speak to your
easy.
idea about suffering and knowledge. So it's our belief in the Christian doctrines that everyone is aware of God through the general revelation in the heavens. And so that's our belief as a Christian. It's in Romans. But we also have this idea of human suffering. What's super interesting is if you guys go to the Globe study, which is a study that was done by a number of academics all over the world in 62 different societies, you're going to find that the places that have the highest levels of suffering also happen to be the places that have the highest levels of beliefs in God. And the places that have the least levels of suffering,
that's the problem.
Like
the problem is
some of the northern and Western European countries tend to have lower belief in God. So God might work through suffering to bring people closer to him and to build our spirits.
Yep.
That sounds like a terrible. That doesn't sound such an efficient way of getting love, is to make them go through suffering.
Well, how would you
Well, you're not
understand
God.
empathy? How would you understand characteristics like empathy if you never had to be empathetic about anything, or perseverance if you never had to work hard? Or, a lot of the different values that we all hold near and dear are built in us as we grow and we get older.
Well, you wouldn't say the Swedish have no concept of morality, even though the country has.
I didn't say that.
No,
Well,
she didn't say that.
I know, but it's making it sound like saying suffering is the way to learn.
Sweden is the rape capital of Europe. They're not doing really well right now at all. So
Well,
but
this
the
is
countries.
his point, though his point is, like, for example, there's a better way to teach someone about empathy than making them get raped as a child and watch their parents be murdered in front of them in Vietnam. Like, you can teach
Better
someone,
way.
Yeah, there are much better ways than that.
By
don't
what standard?
What do you mean by what standard? Like, by the
By what
standard.
standard? What's wrong with them having experienced it? Both,
it's evil,
through first
that's what's
person
wrong.
or third person.
Like, come on, Veckel. Has your morality been that distorted?
I'm serious. You're making judgments based off of something that sounds like it's clearly based off of some form of subjectivity.
No, it's well, of course, every judgment I will make is subjective because
there you go.
No, but
Okay.
I'm still. What do you mean? I'm a moral realist, and I've got better arguments for it than you have, and that's not the point.
Well, no. Well, you can say that all you want, but it sounds utterly arbitrary to me. With your objections to our beliefs is utterly arbitrary to me because you're not giving us.
My beliefs are utterly arbitrary.
Okay, fine. Well, to cocaine then, or whatever you want to call it. But see, you're the one who's coming up with the objections here, not me.
Yeah,
you're asking us questions. You're the one posing the challenge to us about God's character. Hold on a second. You're the one who's posing to us challenges about God and about the Christian tenets regarding morality and stuff. Yeah. And yet when we turn around and try to challenge your position on these things, Okay, you want to say, well, I'm a moral realist. Okay, fine. If you want to just try to get away from trying to, give an answer for why you have these positive claims about our position, then
Well,
fine. But
no,
it seems utterly arbitrary to me, though.
no. So what I'm trying to say,
course it is.
Beckel, is, for example, something like raping a child is morally evil, right? And that appears to
According-
that I actually intuitively perceive that, just as I perceive the computer in front of me, the shade of yellow in the walls around me, and I'm as certain of that as other things. Now, there's no better way, or that 1 + 1 = 2. There's no better way to argue for it than an example like that, which just impresses on the mind how evil it is.
That's still subjective according to your
What do you mean?
position.
It's like, do I need to state that there is a platonic?
While I agree with you that these things are wrong, I don't
No, I
understand
know,
how,
but-
from an atheist,
But
can
what are you
assert that
saying?
the
Are you
inherent
saying
nature.
that I have to tell you the ontology of abstracta in order
Well,
for you to be able to
Well,
speak?
if you're going to make an argument about God and the actions that He does, how are you going to debunk or disprove the Christian's explanation for why God does what He does? I don't
Well, what do you
understand
mean?
how you do that.
Well, so here's how I'd prove it. I would say it is true that murdering babies is always wrong, always and everywhere. God ordered the murdering of babies, therefore God's actions were morally wrong.
Nope, that's false. Now, again,
Why?
No, because what you're referring to is murder, that which is a moral issue there.
Yes.
There's something inherently moral about the act of murder.
Yes.
But you're claiming that what God did to the babies is murder, and you don't have a basis for that.
He ordered people to murder them. So yeah, if God had just poofed them out of existence, that wouldn't have been murder. But
what's the basis for you determining that this was murder on God's part, though? That's what I'm trying to ask you. Nate, you're doing exactly what I just said you're doing. You see, you're coming in here, you're making positive claims about the action of God, right? But then when I challenge you about your position on these things, you try to tap dance away from it by saying, well, I'm a moral realist.
Hang on a sec. Hang on a sec.
Feckle, where am I standing? What
hang on a sec.
I just love how you're not able to give us anything objective.
Well, ask
but
me.
Yet you go on and make these claims about God, and you're not even trying to do an internal critique.
Shut up. Ask me a question.
Well, I was in the middle of saying something, but go ahead.
Wait, let's go to. Let me just say, Jesse was trying to interrupt there, so let me get Jesse in here for real quick.
I want to question the way you're thinking, Nathan.
Sure.
Autonomous person or an autonomous reasoning would take the aspect that they're their own governing agent, and in that, how can you imply, say, a moral realism or moral a code of any sort?
Can you clarify that question a bit? I'm not exactly sure.
Autonomous reasoning, autonomous person. So you're a self-governing agent. You move into this world because of the way you might be an idealist, but you manipulate your surroundings. You have your it's called autonomy, right?
Yeah, I get
autonomy. Yeah. So to me, how can you add a moral objective to that autonomy?
Well, I suppose it'd be like saying, how can you add that there's yellow in that, or like there's yellow that you perceive, or that there's physical objects that you maneuver your vehicle, your meat vehicle around and stuff like that. You just perceive morality in the exact same way as you perceive all these other things. It just impresses as a percept upon the mind.
But that would be subjective in that view. See,
no.
This is, I think, where Beckel and you are splitting hairs here. Is you're claiming an autonomous person, but yet I can't see how you can lay out the moral claims that you're laying out. This is, I think, where the
let me describe then, Jesse. So when I'm saying, so there's a confusion, but you're right in saying that I'm subjective, because I am a subjective agent having an experience. Okay, so I don't have direct access to reality. Arguably, like only a pantheistic God could sort of do that, where everything was its being. So like when I say that there is a table out there in the world, I only have percepts of that table, but then I make the additional inference that there's a table in itself. But I can't access the table in itself. I can only access my percepts of the table. But I still am justified in saying that there's an underlying ontology to the table. And it's the same with morality. It just impresses upon my percepts in the same way. And then I infer that there's an underlying ontology to it. But yeah, I don't have direct access to that ontology and could be wrong. I'm a fallibilist. I'm not an infallibilist.
I don't think that analogy works.
Okay. Now,
Okay.
just a sec. The table can be there for day after day after day after day, right? So then you can gain some truth of that table.
Yeah.
Morality. One day you use your neighbor's lawnmower and you keep it. All of a sudden, and your neighbor's pretty upset with you, but you say, well, that doesn't matter because today I feel like I want to keep your lawnmower. So it can't lay in there, but the time span for something like a table will always be there as a table, where the morality, in your view, shouldn't be.
I'm not quite sure what you're saying there.
I think.
Are you saying?
I think
Oh, yeah, I want to
he's
say hi to Converse too. Oh, is that Mr. Parker talking? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think he's trying to say that due to the fact that you got your mower yesterday from your neighbor, why is it wrong for you to have it the next day because he already gave you permission yesterday to do it, or today, or did I say that wrong?
No,
Yeah.
I guess I'm just trying to say that a table can be there and it won't change, but your moralities could, as we, you could think that it's okay to, like.
Okay, well, I see the confusion here, Jesse. I think what you're
Yeah.
getting confused with is between the epistemology and the ontology. So you're right that if we're going to be certain about the external world and we're going to say, well, things seem to stay as they are, but the point is that because I'm being a fallibilist in my epistemology about how things are coming to us through the percepts, and there actually are some people who will one day, for example, something will go wrong and then they'll be bumping into all sorts of things, or they get vertigo and they're falling, where they have a faulty experience of the world as it is in itself. And the same happens with morality, where like there is a state of affairs that obtains. It is wrong to not give the lawnmower back to the neighbor, but our perception of that can be wrong, just the same as it can be, I can see something as black and white when it's really yellow or something like that. Or
So just to clarify for the audience, so you're saying with the epistemology is how you come to know something, and the ontology is how something exists. So just to distinguish that, whether or not something exists. And so we would say, as a moral realist, and I'm one too, I would say that morality does exist. Objective morality exists, and it's something to which we all strive, and something we all know. It's inherent within us, and we know it even is told to us by Romans 2:15.
yeah, everything except the Romans 2:15 part. I'd.
Of course, that's convenient.
Also, I want to say hi to. Let me welcome Converse Contender also here.
Hey, what's up, guys? You able to hear me all right?
Sure can.
All right, cool.
And congratulations on your wedding.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it's nice being married.
You just recently got married?
Yeah, I just got married. Just got back from my honeymoon. So been back for maybe 2 weeks now. So
welcome to hell.
Thanks so much for the welcome.
Who said that?
Yeah.
Who just said that?
Jackal, he was just kidding. He's been married a while. Huh?
Yeah. It's great. We just had our 14th anniversary last month. So.
Oh man, congratulations on that.
Yeah, congratulations.
I kind of wanted to just jump in because this question about like God making things perfect and questioning whether this process or that process is perfect, right? And so I think there's I've never thought this was a great argument even before I was really took Christianity seriously, but there are a couple of theological answers to this question. And just before I give them, I just want to say, like, I heard someone the other day making a distinction saying like, well, that's a theological answer. It's like when we're talking about, that's what we're talking about is theology, right? It's like if we were to be talking philosophy and you're like, yeah, but that's a philosophical answer. Well, yeah, because that's what we're talking about. But the two main answers are, number one, the fall, right? So with the fall, you have curses and some very negative things coming into the world, but also with God, people, this is a big one that I keep hearing over and over again on a lot of popular atheist channels, is like, you guys are limiting God from what you're saying about him and things like this. But the thing is, like, it's not that we're limiting God, but when God creates a world with free creatures, and Veckel and I briefly spoke about this the other day, it automatically limits God if he wants to have free creatures. So, for example, I used an example that, like, if I have a dog on a chain in the yard and I let him off the chain and he runs down the street, like, if I let him free, it automatically limits, like, because I have power over the dog, right? So, I do have that power. But if I choose to let the dog free, then I'm choosing to partially limit the power I have over it or the control I have over it. So I think those are a good start.
I want to also welcome Veckel. I'm sorry, I mean, G-Man. G-Man's here in the conversation too. So, we just lost somebody. Who did we lose?
How you guys
We
doing?
lost Nate.
G-Man, I'm sorry, man. I will return your call soon, man. I know you've been trying to get hold of me, man. It's been crazy.
No, don't worry about it. It's all good.
I guess we just lost Nathan. So it's just like I was trying to figure out, okay, who's gone right now?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, maybe I don't have a full grasp of what Nate's position is on moral ontology and stuff like that. He says he's a moral realist. But it seems to me still that the arguments that I hear, and when I hear atheists say that they believe in objective morality, some of them do say that. Every time I keep picking at their position, it still sounds ultimately subjective at the very root, because they're basing it off of either some form of utilitarianism, pragmatism, conventionalism, or consequentialism. All of these things, each of these aspects of morality seem to be at the best rooted in some form of subjectivity, whether it's you're determining something is wrong because of how you feel, you're determining something is wrong because of what a group of people agree with, you're determining something is wrong because this works better than that thing, so on and so forth. None of those things, though, really give us the true intrinsic nature of the thing that's in question. How do we know for a fact, apart from people's opinions, apart from group of people getting together and making a decision that such and such is wrong? How do we know that the thing in and of itself is morally or immoral? How do we know that?
Yeah.
And if you're talking to a Christian, we say, well, God, because God is not contingent upon anything. The atheist says, well, it's contingent upon my senses, how I feel, how this group of people got together and said, yada, yada, yada. But see, and so it's these same type of people who are trying to tell us that God is wrong for doing it this way or that way. But when you ask them what the standard is, they can't give you an answer for it, except for it's my opinion.
Well, that's the thing. So this idea. Oh, Nathan's back here. It's the whole idea of what you're saying. I want to sort of clarify just so people also know what you're saying, because you talked about utilitarianism is basically saying you want the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Consequentialism is just saying you want the greatest good, and so you don't necessarily say for the greatest number of people. But that's what the atheists will do. They'll say, okay, because we have this shared desire to achieve this goal of maximizing well-being and minimizing suffering, therefore we must have an objective morality right there, purely because of the shared desire. But number one, we don't have that shared desire. People have all different desires and conceptions of what well-being actually is.
Yeah, you brought up Muslims. You brought up Islam earlier. Need I say more?
Yeah. Yeah,
my studies of the Lex Talionis has brought me to a point where morality is definitely objective. I mean, there's a violation from one to another, and there's a retaliation, and this is where it grew from. And to me, this is a side effect of humankind. So I think it has to be. And anybody that studies it should come to that conclusion, I think.
Well, it might help if because you guys are confused about Nathan's views. Like Nathan, do you hold to one of the normative theories? Like,
in terms of normative ethics, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I mostly think about matter ethics, so I don't really think any. I mean, I think perhaps a combination of them might be true. So perhaps something like natural law, but also consequentialism, but also deontology, like a sort of a bit of a combination. They all sort of mix together in certain aspects. So.
Okay, yeah, because I have tended to take more of a deontology view, but I do sympathize with virtue ethics a lot. But I think that you're right that in some ways you could have a combination. Like, for example, on my channel a while back, I read an excerpt from a philosophy book from one of my classes on ethics that was talking about judgment in the judicial system. And it was saying that, you might take the deontological and consequentialist view, one as a deterrent and one as a punishment. So with deontology, you have a rule-based system, right? If you break the rules, then you've committed the crime. But with, you might use the other as a deterrent to say, like, hey, if you do this, like, you're going to be in big trouble, so that to deter people from doing it in the first place, right? But ultimately, I think you need to try and I think that the normative part is where you figure out where your meta ethics applies, right?
Yeah, I think we should. I just want to define terms for people in case so normative basically looks at this idea of consequentialism or deontology. And we already talked about what consequentialism is, but deontology says we have a moral duty to do what's right. And then you have virtue ethics. It's kind of that Goldilocks idea that you have these virtues in place and you don't want to be too far on either side of the right or the left of those virtues.
Right. Good point, SJ. Sorry, but that was a great point. Yeah. So with normative, all we mean is, when you say should or you ought, that's what normative basically means, is that you should or ought do something according to either because it's against the rules or because of the consequences of the decision or something. Yeah. So sorry.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know that there was somebody in the live chat that said that God doesn't practice what he preaches. And I like to know what example they're using for that.
Okay. Yeah. If whoever said that in the live chat, feel free. Thank you, G-Man.
Yeah, it's because God doesn't practice what he preaches, and that means he told you to do something as well as himself. So I would like an example of how God does not, quote unquote, practice what he preaches.
So we'll see if we get that. So I want to say welcome to everybody who's in here. Those people who had to leave, Veckel had to take off, and but it's always nice talking to all of you. And it's Nathan right now is probably talking to his girlfriend, so she's in the chat here too, but she's not right now.
She's knitting.
Oh, she's knitting?
And as far as just so everybody knows what my moral worldview is, I'm pretty sure it's close to SJ's. I'm a moral objectivist. I believe in absolute right and wrong, and I believe everybody else in this room believes in absolute right and wrong. And I believe that if you believe in absolute right and wrong, then you must believe that there is a moral lawgiver, whether he be God or self. But you believe in the absolute moral lawgiver.
Do you think you have like infallible knowledge of things, G-Man? Like the way that you know, like an action. So it's one thing for it to be objective in the world, but I suppose, like we were saying before, that so there's a temperature in the room, say, but someone might walk into it having just come out of a hot room, and someone might walk into that room having come out of a cold room. To one person, it will feel warm. To the other person, it will feel cold. Now, there's one state of affairs, but it appears differently to all of those people. Do you think that morality is something that we might perceive similarly in a fallibilistic way, or do you think that you have like direct access to the truth and can't be wrong about when you think something's right or wrong?
Both. I believe that we have direct access to the truth. I mean, I believe I do, and I believe that you can too if you know Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior, since He is the author and finisher of our faith, and He is the example that we have for what our morality should be, since it all started with him.
Yeah, I think I'll add to what you're saying. So what I think is also is we come to discover this truth, and Jesus, like G-Man just said, Jesus is the truth and the standard, and so we're trying to figure out. And humanity's been essentially searching for God, searching for an understanding, and searching and hoping to be more like Jesus. And so He's the standard against which we judge all of the actions.
Somebody in the live chat gave us an example. He says, God says, "Don't kill, but kills." First of all, God told the nation of Israel, "Thou shalt not kill." And as a matter of fact, if you do a little bit of studying there, it's referring to murder. It is referring to murder, and that would be the unlawful killing of somebody. Okay. That law was given to Israel. No law was given to God. Okay. So the only people that's obligated to keep that law is Israel. So God is not obligated to keep that, since that law was given to Israel. It's something like this. If you have an ambassador that goes from one nation to another nation, there are certain things that ambassador is going to be immune to when he comes when he comes and visit another particular nation. Those laws will not be subject to the ambassador of this particular nation or whatever. You know what I mean? So just because God told Israel not to kill doesn't mean that He doesn't have the right to do it, since all lives belong to Him to begin with.
Yeah, I think you'd say this idea of God's knowledge, because He's very much aware of what people are capable of doing. He's the one who wants to optimize life on this planet and ensure that the most people get to Him. And to do that kind of a thing, what He's going to do is sometimes people's lives are ended at one point when they're young, and some people their lives ended when they're older. But God's the one who's sovereign and makes those decisions, again, to maximize our experiences.
Yep. So God doesn't not practice what He preaches. We get our morality from Him, and He doesn't contradict His nature at all.
Yeah, do you think the way of answering that person's question that sort of wouldn't alienate them as much, though? Like I think the way you answered was quite aggressive, right? And they're probably they're gonna just think like you're a nasty person, and not, rather than engage with what you said because of the way that you said it, which isn't. I'm not saying that that's the rational thing for them to do, but it's less likely to convert them, right, to engage like that. Do you not think?
No, I think that if they looked at me being aggressive, that would be an excuse of not dealing with reality. And the reality is that what just got finished saying, that God is sovereign, and God doesn't have the limitations that we have. We are His creation. He is the creator. He is the moral lawgiver, and He has the right to do that. There is no law on Him. The only argument that the person in the live chat can actually make is, how does God contradict His own nature? And there are no examples in the entire Bible how He contradicts His own nature.
So are you saying, Nathan, that sometimes are you saying that somebody might take G-Man differently because of his approach or something like that?
I think, well, if we were to put the shoe on the other foot, and I'm not an atheist, but let's say I was arguing for atheism, and I said, well, all of your arguments are just excuses for you to believe in something silly, and you're denying what you know in your heart, which is that Christianity isn't true, and it's just a stupid position. Do you think you're likely to go, oh, this guy's speaking sense to me, I really like what he's saying, I like this guy, I'm going to listen to it, or are you just going to go, oh, screw that guy, I'm going to double down on my own position, and so broadly.
That's a person that's being emotional, though. If a person has to be nice to you and have to speak with with fair speech in order for a person to learn something, you know what I mean? There are some of us out there that are a little bit more passionate than others. That's what it is.
I want to say something. There's a study that was done. They talked about university professors, and they had two different university professors. One was an actor who wasn't a real university professor, but had a really likable personality. He was acting to have a really likable personality. He didn't know squat about the subject. And another one knew everything about the topic. That was what his dissertation and PhD covered. And so they did this lecture, and students thought that the actor was the one who was, that they learned the most from the actor, even though the actor didn't know squat. And it was because of his approach. So that's kind of a scary thing. But sometimes the approach, just like when people are looking at debates and trying to figure out which person won the debate, and if they haven't already picked a side, a lot of times they're going to pick the person that seems really kind of likable. And so that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, and that's probably a testament to human psychology. But obviously it works both ways, right? Because yeah, so I knew Nate would agree with that. I'll give you an example. One time I had an argument, I remember years ago, and it was basically that the naturalistic argument that like if we are just highly, complex humans, basically highly complex apes, like why would we trust that our minds would give us truth rather than just survivability? And somebody said, oh, that's just a G-man argument. And I go, no, actually, that comes straight from Charles Darwin. He wrote
Yeah,
a
it
letter to
does.
Mr. Graham who said that. And then when they heard that, they realized that their argument, that really what they were trying to do was avoid it by giving an ad hominem. But when they realized, oh wait, that was from Charles Darwin. Then they all of a sudden gave it credence, and they were like, oh well, yeah, I mean, I can see what he's saying, but it's like when they initially heard it, they must have heard it from G-Man first. They thought that's just a ridiculous argument because he gave it, and I'm like, okay,
I've heard that before. I've heard that before where people have if something like that comes out of my mouth or Eshe's mouth or Beckel's mouth or another Christian's mouth, you know what I mean? They'll just say, okay, that's not good information. They're just, making excuses for what they believe. And then they hear it come out of the mouth of one of their heroes. And then all of a sudden they give it credence. So I totally get what you're saying.
But I've heard it the other way as well, right? That's just a Dillahunty argument or something like that. So we got to be careful on our side as well that we don't fall into that. And like one thing I like to show people this idea of approach, because I worked in sales for a while, and in sales it's all about the approach. Like you can take two people, give them the same call script, and due to their tonality or whatever else, like there's different approaches with the same script will bring different results. And so I like to, like, for example, let's say with like the protest right now, right? There is an effective approach and a non-effective approach. And I like to say it like this, like, we need to get people to hear our cause and to, get on our side and to lend credence to our cause. So let's go block traffic, right? It just seems like, what? Are you serious? Like, it's just a terrible, but like, if you're like, hey, look, let's go, Gary Vaynerchuk used to say this: there's two ways to build the biggest building in town. One is by tearing down the biggest building in town, and the other is to build the biggest building in town. So,
but you want to know what though?
Right?
I get what you're saying, because I've heard certain YouTubers talk this way before. I think her name was Holy Spackle. She used to say it's all about the conversation. They have like this postmodernistic like mentality about it being all about the conversation. But I'm a little bit more blunt than that. I put it to you like this: I don't think truth cares about people's feelings. You know what I mean? If this wall behind me is blue, then somebody should tell you it's blue. It's going to say it's blue, and it's not going to care about how a person feels about it being green or yellow. This is blue. And when we say that it's blue, you should accept that it's blue because it's obvious that it's blue. So I think that's why some people.
The problem is like I go, this wall's jello, you fucking bastard, fuck you, like, and then you go, well, fuck you back at it, and then like it's like, whoa, hang on, like we're not talking about the wall anymore. That's the problem. That's like then it becomes really difficult to talk about the color of the wall.
I understand that, but this ain't about us going back and forth and saying that. I gave my opinion about morality being objectively true, God being the moral lawgiver. There are absolute moral values. Everybody in this room has them, and I can prove it by asking a simple question. And you're gonna have to say, you want to know what? I agree 100% that that's wrong all the time, or you got it, embrace it in a more normal voice. Yeah, so
you guys are getting along pretty well this time.
Yeah,
I think psychology has shown though that when you confront people with beliefs that directly contradict their beliefs, they tend to cling tighter to their beliefs. Not all the time, right? But like if you watch Christians after they've dealt with Aaron Ra, for example, they don't just go, you know what, this guy's right. They go, this guy is so like indoctrinated that he can't even see straight. He couldn't even understand logic. But then there are some other people like I guess Ozzy would be one where he's like he directly contradicts Aaron on faith and evidence and a lot of other things, and he's closer to where you can be like, oh, I can see where he's coming from, although I still think he's wrong. And you see Christ, kind of handle this as well. Like when people like when disciples like, why are you speaking to people in parables? Like why did he talk to some? And he said because some people have ears to hear, right? And so I think there is a there is something to this psychological view that like people, when confronted directly with views that contradict their beliefs, they tend to cling tighter. Although there may be some, that's why they use the term tend, because there may be some to hear you and go, no, this guy's exactly right. But
Right
I
on.
think those would be the people that have ears to hear, for example.
Well, as far as Arnold Raw goes, I've spoke to Arnold Raw before. I spoke to Arnold Raw a few times. I wouldn't say that he's indoctrinated. That's I'm sure some other Christian would say that, but not me. I got a different opinion about him, but I'll keep that to myself for right now.
You know what though? There is a point as far as Aaron Ra versus Ozymandias. That guy, you've got two totally different kind of personalities and how they approach people. You have Aaron Ra, who comes across as very hostile, and you could even see it when he was in his debate with IP. And then you have the approach that's used by Ozzy. Ozzy's very polite, and he gets people to like him by being super polite. And that approach is useful to reaching people, because otherwise you do get this like if I listen to Aaron, I just like, oh, stop. You know?
Yeah, SJ, have you seen Aaron debate Ozzy?
No, I didn't even know he debated Ozzy.
Oh my, it's one of my favorites of all time. Watch, look up Aaron versus Ozzy, and he basically tells Aaron, you're wrong about faith, you're wrong about beliefs, you're wrong about I think it was properly basic beliefs he disagreed with them on. I mean, like everything you would think like Aaron is wrong about, Ozzy basically confronts him and gives him the reasons why he's wrong, and he still yet again clings tighter to his beliefs, and he never relinquished them. So definitely watch that.
That's interesting.
Right. So if you want someone like Aaron to be saved, right, and you believe he's going to burn in hell forever if not, then surely the way of like that way isn't going to work. But maybe just being nice to him, showing him how your faith enables you to, maybe that's actually going to get through to him in a way that clearly just saying, you're factually wrong, mate, you're factually wrong, here's the fact, like just doesn't, like has been shown time and time again to not get through to him. I guess that's mine.
I had a conversation with my brother about this years ago. He used to tell me, when you're preaching the gospel to somebody, don't talk to them about all of their sins, because they're never going to come to Jesus if you talk to them about their sins. And me and him had a back and forth, and we went through different examples of Peter in Acts 2 versus the Apostle Paul and how he went about doing things. You know what I mean? He wanted to use what I would like to call the Barney the purple dinosaur approach, as opposed to using John the Baptist, right? Yeah, you're right to a certain degree that you have to be nice to somebody in order for somebody to come to faith. But I would probably word it like this. One would have to be loving, and one would have to preach the gospel, because you're not going to win nobody to Christ with debating. You're only going to win people to Christ with preaching. In 1 Corinthians chapter 1, it says, it is by the foolishness of preaching that men are going to be saved. That's what God chose. He didn't choose debating. He didn't choose, reasoning with each other. He chose preaching. And then it's up to the individual to determine whether or not they believe what they're listening to. You know what I mean? Aaron Ra is a very stubborn, and he's very stuck in his ways. But if you put Aaron Ra in a one-on-one conversation where he doesn't get any help from anybody, and he's forced to actually have to deal with what's actually being said, Aaron Ra has a better chance of getting saved than versus going to these hangouts. You know what I mean? When he could be saved by like 20 of his friends. You know what I mean? And when he gets in trouble versus dealing with somebody one-on-one and having to deal with what's actually being said and done on a continual basis.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with you guys on the debate versus a conversation. And I've been trying not to kind of get away from debates for that reason. Is I feel like in a debate, people come into that with their they want to see their side win. It's us versus them. And it's all about, okay, no matter what this person says, they're going to win. And no matter what the other side says, that person's losing. And I think a lot of people have that. But when you listen to a conversation and people are just free flowing and talking, I think there's a chance that you can get through to people if it's a good conversation.
Somebody in the live chat said that, by the way, faith is not a reliable pathway to truth. Well, faith by itself, I would definitely agree with you. However, what you put your faith in is a different story. Let's say I was an atheist and I was not a Christian. And I said, I'm going to put my faith in Thunderfoot, or put my faith in the scientific method, or I'm going to put my faith into a particular scientist. That scientist is going to help me understand what a molecule is, what an atom is. That scientist is going to help me understand what light speed is, as opposed to the sound, the speed of sound or whatever. You know what I mean? And he's going to, because I take that step of faith to listen to what they have to say and then go do my own research, of course, there's a reliable way, depending on what you put your faith in and where it's supposed to lead. If I want to know more about science, I put my faith into scientists. You know what I mean? And then, do the heavy, then do my own work later. If I want to know more about God, I'm going to have to go to somebody who's actually studied the topic, not somebody who hasn't read or done anything like that. So I agree and I disagree with the comment that's in the live chat.
You get what they're saying though, G? So sort of like if you're saying like faith is the tool that someone should use to believe, right? And they're saying, well, I see people using faith,
not the tool, not the tool.
Well, maybe not. What word would you want to use then? Sorry.
Faith is the method to get to know whether or not God exists. Because when you try to use the scientific method, which is only designed to test the natural world, and God is outside of time and space, you're only going to get but so far.
But so faith is the method, right? And you're trying to tell this person they need to use faith as the method to get to know and believe in God. But they're saying, well, when I see people using faith, they're coming to false beliefs. So why should I trust faith, right? And you're actually saying, because you're saying, well, if people use faith to believe in something that's true, it's true. If people use faith to believe in something that's false, it's false. Which is sort of, well, yeah, but it doesn't really, like, this person's got a sincere objection here. So maybe, like, if we want them to understand Christianity better and maybe come to consider it, like that answer isn't going to do it.
That's a fair question. That's a very fair question. Yes, faith can lead you to a falsehood understanding about God, and faith can lead you to a true understanding about God. But science can do the same thing too. When you place your faith in science, you can come to the real conclusion that a scientific proposition is true. But you can also trust in science and believe in pseudoscience and things that is not very scientific at all. To a certain degree, you have to start off by faith to go through your journey to find out whether or not you're worshiping and following the true God. By doing that, you have to get into the Bible, you have to pray, and you have to test God like he tells you to do in Scripture. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I want to add to what you're saying there, because I think that I think that a lot of times people they make it a zero-sum game where it's either all faith or nothing, and it doesn't really work that way. Jesus does say we have to take the first step and have a little bit of faith. And he did that even to his disciples when he was on the boat, telling him when he was walking on water, or the other time when he told them to throw the net out at a different side of the ship because they could catch more fish. You have to take that first step and believe and trust in him, and then start testing the different ways that our world is explained to us. And so we're not supposed to just do blind faith. A lot of people think that Christians are just blindly believing, and some Christians do blind faith, but the gospel tells us actually to study, to test, to make sure that what you believe is the truth, because there are a lot of false prophets, and that's what Jesus portended. And we know that. We saw it with Muhammad.
Yeah, a lot of false teachers, a lot of false prophets. There are people creeping into the church pretending to be something they are not. And the only way we can know who they are is by staying as close to the Savior as possible. That's how you're going to know who the real and who the fakes are.
Yeah, so I think that reliability is a big factor in faith, because, like, let's say that there are two experts in archaeology, just to give an example, right? The top two experts, and they disagree on the model. For example, you can trust one of them because either you lean toward their model or you can trust the other one. Now, who's more reliable, right? So when I look at all of the major world religions, I look at reliability, right? Is Muhammad more reliable than Christ, or is Siddhartha Gautama Buddha more reliable, and so on and so forth. So and that's one thing that I always looked at is when becoming a Christian is the reliability of Christ, right? So, like Robert Coles, I believe it was at Harvard, who said, like, the majority of modern ethics are just footnotes to Christ's sermons and things like that. And, or even let's take the archaeological example, right? I keep hearing about how, like, there's all this archaeological evidence against the Bible. Well, like, if you read the literature, you'll see that there are a lot of secular scholars that'll say, like, of course the Old Testament didn't happen like it said, the New Testament's flawed, whatever. But keep in mind that they used to say that King David never existed. till they found inscriptions and the stela, and they used to say that Nebuchadnezzar never existed until they found a building with his name on like every brick under it.
And they still didn't believe. And they still didn't believe.
And then like Luke chapter 3, they said that Lysanias, who was the tetrarch of Abila, never existed. Then they found a stele with his name on it that said Lysanias, tetrarch of Abilene. And they said that the pool of Siloam and John never existed until they uncovered 5 covered colonnades at the pool. And so all I'm saying is like, and there have been literally hundreds of these.
But nobody's going to
come. And the stones will cry out. And the stones will cry out. Remember when Jesus said that? I want to say just Rob came in here. Rob's from Sentinel Apologetics. He must have gotten out of his Muslim chat. So Rob, you want to say hello?
Hello. That was a complete waste of time because I was a guest. I was a guest on the show amongst like 10 other people, and yeah, I should have come here instead.
I do want to say this regarding the archaeology that the other gentleman was talking about. I think it's Converse, but those people didn't come to faith. They said that David never existed, and they found out he existed. They didn't come to faith. They didn't believe that a building or a pool was somewhere, and they found out that it was there, and they didn't believe. None of those things are essential. It's the real issues that matter at the end of the day. Are you a sinner? Are you a sinner? And do you need a savior? Those are the issues that needs to be looked at. If it could be proven that we do what the scripture says, that we are born sinners and that we sin and that we deserve his righteous judgment, when you're convicted of that, it brings you to it brings you to the knowledge that you need Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Knowing that whether or not David existed doesn't hurt anyone's faith. Knowing whether or not there was a pool or not doesn't hurt anyone's faith. And knowing whether or not the Jews was actually in Egypt or not doesn't hurt our faith. What hurts our faith is can you prove that we're not sinners? Can you prove that Jesus Christ never existed? Can you prove that he never died on the cross? Can you prove that that there was no that Jesus didn't do any of the things that he said? And they can't.
Sure, but but I think people can be swayed. So if I'm an archaeologist back then, and I think all of these things are illegitimate, like for example, Nazareth was never a place. There was never any like structures at Jericho. King David didn't exist. Nebuchadnezzar didn't exist. Lysanias, all this thing, and I kept routinely seeing it uncovered. Like Time Magazine wrote an article called "Score One More for the Bible" or something right like that. About one of the digs, and I think it was Jericho, and I think that I would end up being swayed more. Now that's not necessarily what's going to do it for me, and that's why I ask people sometimes. I'll go, "Is this the issue that's holding you back, or if I answer this incomplete, will you convert, or is there something else?" And then they'll always say, "Well, no, because there's more after this, right?" But I think you can sway people. So
it's a waste of time doing that. I totally believe it's a colossal waste of time doing that, mainly because it has nothing to do with whether or not these things existed or not. It has to do with whether or not you need to be transformed by Jesus Christ. That's what it comes down to. And if you look at what the non-believing world is saying, they're saying that they're not bad people. They're saying that they're not sinners. They're saying that they're in, that naturally speaking, that they're good people. And that's why I spent a great deal of my time explaining that that's not true, that all of us are flawed, that we fall short of God's glorious standard, and we need a savior. That is what we ought to be focusing on, not whether or not, a building was around. Because if I prove the building was around, you're still not going to believe you're a sinner. That has nothing to do with why he died on the cross.
Sure, but let's take an example like Nate, and then I'm going to go and I'll let Rob take my place. But like Nate, for example, was a Christian, or he was. Let's say that he. I was gonna say, let's say that allegedly he was a Christian.
We could watch my conversion testimony.
And so then he was swayed to the to, I think he would say he's in something like an agnostic Christian or something like, I forget what he calls it, but I think that Nathan can be swayed again, and I think he knows all the things you're saying about the theology of being a sinner and all these things, but I just think that he's been swayed the other way, and so I don't disagree with you.
And what's the other way? What's the other way? Atheism, agnosticism? What's the other way?
Well, I think he would say he's an agnostic right now. I think he said, but
well, as you can see, Nate is right in the middle. So this position is primed to test his Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
I would say this though, Nate. I should probably get this out the way now before you find out the hard way. I don't believe that classical atheists exist, and that's all I'm gonna say. I'll let Rob talk because I did a lot of talking.
What do you mean by classical atheist? Sorry, do you mean like
these atheists out there, these atheists that say that they don't believe that God exists due to a lack of evidence. That's just not true. They don't exist. I believe what exists today, and this is probably SJ's first time hearing me talk about this. But I believe what exists today when people call themselves atheists are misotheists and anti-theists. There are no atheists that exist today. Atheists in the classical sense has been defeated a long time ago because I believe that science has proven that God exists. And atheists intentionally try to hide this with the tactic of denialism. You know what I mean? And I can prove that all day, every day in my sleep. But I'm just telling you what my position is so that you don't get caught off guard or nothing like that.
Sorry, is that because of what it says in Romans that you believe that, and then reading?
It's because of what it says in Romans, and it's how atheists conduct themselves. And it doesn't matter what flavor of atheism you are. If you're a militant atheist, strong atheist, agnostic atheist, whatever, it doesn't matter which one you are. In my worldview, I believe that you're either a misotheist or an anti-theist who practices denialism, because SJ right now can talk about the facts for the resurrection and then it'll just be denied. SJ will talk about the fact that Jesus Christ existed using secular and biblical sources. It will be denied. I can show you how atheists are constantly only attacking Protestant Christian God, and that will be denied. You understand what I'm saying? So I believe that denialism is their weapon of choice, but they are either misotheists and anti-theists. But there are no atheists. I can assure you of that.
I was just finding one person who backed your point on some people wanting to deny Jesus himself.
Basically, yeah. And I don't, and I'm not doing that to be hostile. I'm just letting you know what I believe. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I get it.
So, Rob, what are your thoughts on some of this stuff?
Honestly, I was actually going to say that a thought came to my mind the other day where I was thinking, we see all these debates online. We see these, in fact, we see debates, humans debating all sorts of things. And then, because I was having a surf the other day, and it was like an epiphany where I'm just looking at this ripple across the water. And that ripple, even though, it's lifeless, but that ripple or the sea creatures within the ocean, they're just getting on with their lives, nature's just doing its thing. And all that noise in the background, which would be in the city, back on land, right? So I'm in the waters and everything happening in the buildings behind me. Ultimately, that's just not going to matter. So the thought that came to mind was, you have people with agendas or certain biases, both positive and negative. But then it's like, in these type of discussions, we tend to allow that to then affect us emotionally, psychologically. And in this case, like what G-Man's getting at, you have mesotheists who have that gripe with God, right? Like they're angry, like they hate God, the God haters. But then within these discussions, it sort of gets a bit personal as well. It's like, oh, you hold to this particular position. Could be a really gentle, positive Christ follower or a really negative Christ hater. You both have both ideas at the end of the day, personal and within those individuals. But then when they're expressed, unfortunately, that then seems to be like a virus that permeates within society. And here we have nature.
Non-realism. I've done it.
Yeah, it's just like that's just a random thought that came to mind. I don't know if that would be applicable in this discussion, but we tend to get scared, like, oh, this guy, this anti-Christian, like this atheist, he has this PhD behind his name. Ooh, I'm afraid to engage with him. Or it could be the other way around, like an atheist who's intimidated by a Christian who's a PhD. I just wish that wasn't the case. Like,
I do think that people still, I don't disagree that people can be hardened, to the point like Romans 1 talks about, but let's keep in mind like Nineveh and other examples of people changing their minds, even whole groups of people, at the testament of one person. So just in response to G-Man, I don't totally disagree with you. that people can be, that God can give people over, right? But again, I think that God uses means, all right, to bring about ends. And if philosophy or psychology or some other field could bring about, let's say, somebody being swayed closer to one way, then let's say a Christian brother or sister spending time with them could bring them the full way. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think that
I
they're not.
agree with that. I agree
Yeah.
with that. I don't have an issue with that. I believe that God can use he uses these debates. I've seen people come to Christ because of these debates.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, they made a choice for Christ because of the preaching of the gospel. Because during the debate, that actually happened. We had the argument, we broke everything down, and at the very end, we gave you the opportunity to know Christ and to know him as Lord and Savior. You know what I mean? This relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But he can use philosophy, he can use whatever he wants to bring you closer. But you're not going to accept him except by preaching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can,
Well,
you know what,
I'm gonna
I think it's
I'm gonna get
interesting.
going.
Okay.
So thanks for having me, and Godspeed to everybody.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
comments.
I just wanted to say, I think that I can see a lot of these points. One of the things that I think that atheists, like, had I not gone on Twitter and started interacting with a bunch of atheists, I would have never started writing my blogs and learning more about Christianity and buying all of those books on Christianity and reading the full Bible and doing all the things I've done. It's because of them. So they're the reason. They did it to me.
Yeah, a lot of these arguments that they make force you to go back to the Old Testament and do a lot of reading, pay attention to the things that you didn't really pay attention to. I remember when I first got on here, the scripture that they kept bringing up to me was that God created evil. And I just read right through it, looking for, trying to get through the book that I was reading or whatever. You know what I mean? And then they made a point. Yeah. And they made me go look at it, and I had to go into the, the Hebrew to find out what the word meant. I remember because me and my friend Evangelist Ken spent about an hour doing a Bible study on what the heck was being said there to be prepared to come into a conversation with an atheist when they talk about it. I remember that. So, yeah, the atheists will make you have to be on your A game sometimes when they bring up certain things that you're not used to talking about.
By the way,
I remember my pastor brings up some of that stuff though too, because I'll never forget this for one sermon, and I thought, does this sound like a selling point for Christianity? He got up there and he started talking about Habakkuk, and he started saying how God is going to bring on a vicious people, and is going to take down these people for sinning and all this stuff. I thought, my gosh, why would he be doing a sermon on this? But actually, that's the whole thing through the Old Testament. There's always the Israelites are out there. They start making a lot of mistakes. God brings on and allows them to be conquered by other people. And it happens again and again and again.
Until they repent, and then he restores them, and then they mess up again, and he sends another nation over there to get them, and then they repent, and then he restores them. And this is just the constant pattern that you see from Genesis to Revelation.
Mm-hmm.
So it should tell them that God's pretty consistent in his nature.
Well, and also people are consistent in making just mistakes over and over. And I like how C.S. Lewis puts it in Mere Christianity. He's like, and he said, God chose these people to lead us to Jesus, the chosen people. And we get an account of the hammering process that they received in the Old Testament.
But the way atheists win people is through misotheism and anti-theism. You know what I mean? They talk about the problem of evil. They talk about how can this God be so loving and caring, and the way Christians are talking about, and he allows all of these horrible things to happen in the world. Then when he gets you thinking that way, you're like, well, I don't believe that this loving God exists, and they ignore everything else about his nature, particularly his holiness. And the fact that he had to send Christ to the world to deal with sin and everything. But they focus so much on his love, you know what I mean, that they're able to get people with the problem of evil. You know what I mean? So
I can say, here's what I'm noticing in the atheist group, the people who call themselves atheists. Like Nathan doesn't call himself an atheist, so I'm not going to include Nathan in this group. But I'll say, you go to people like Shannon Q and who's the other one? Your Friendly Neighborhood Atheist. Both of them have been on my channel. Their approach, I think, is highly effective for getting people to come into their belief system, because they have a very friendly approach. They look like they're having a good time. They're laughing and joking and doing things like that. And it's not this stereotypical view of the atheist when you see them and you think, oh, people say, geez, I could fit in with those people, or I'm kind of like those too. I think that that's the approach that's going to win them followers. And so just to keep your eye out for that.
And
Yeah.
although I love Shannon, did you see the discussion I had with her? Like that brief impromptu 20-minute call?
No.
What did you talk
Wait, you were
about?
on a phone call on Shanna's channel? Did you call into Shanna's channel?
Yeah, it was with Telltale.
Telltale Atheist. Yeah, he's got a popular
I think he's
YouTube
ex-Joe
channel.
Witness, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was just a random. I saw them live, and then I saw the phone number call, and then I was thinking, let me just do something totally off the cuff, and I'll just use my Skype to call, and
Wait a
because
minute.
I don't know what to expect. And,
Rob, you're General Han Solo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotta your voice. I gotta make sure I try to remember that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's between me and him, SJ. He knows why I'm asking him that. So I'm not used to seeing his face. I'm gonna try to remember.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
No, but that discussion with Shannon turned out very fruitful. So in other words, it was a discussion that was quite formal, intelligent. It was a sharing of ideas. They actually allowed me to talk. And some of the, I guess you could say, militant side atheists, like in the discussion, like in the live chat, were sort of falling into the category of saying, "Oh, Rob's preaching to us," when really, if that was the case, Shannon would have said that, but that wasn't the case. So, yeah,
I'll have to go watch that. I'll have to watch it. See, I always try to. I have to admit, you can't take the preacher out of the teacher. So sometimes when I get into
Shannon.
these,
yeah, go to my channel, type in Shannon, and the video will pop up.
Oh, I'll do that definitely.
Well, that story definitely.
Have you called into?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to say two things. I want to know, number one, has Rob called into the Atheist Experience? And number two, I want to know if any of you guys have called into The Line, that one that's with Paula G.
The
I
Line,
think Paula G. and
that's it.
Yep.
The
Those
Line.
two, I think, are running The Line. And somebody said that Matt Dillahunty on 10 o'clock is going to be on The Line at 10 o'clock every Thursday night Eastern. And so they actually tagged me and Ray Comfort and G-Man. And so we need to call him. Like, they're just crazy. So just get out of here. I'm not calling Matt Dillahunty ever again.
I'm not calling him either. He doesn't want to have a discussion. He wants me just to just accept what he says, and that's just not going to happen no more. But General Han Solo, I'm finding it interesting that the atheists are against you, because back when we had our problems, I remember a different General Han Solo. I remember when it was all your buddies and they were your friends, and you know.
So Rob, did you?
These are atheists that don't know me. So like Shannon, for example, she in the private chat I put the link in for you guys to watch it. She actually introduces me as like, "Oh, I haven't seen you, since the good old Google Hangout days," and yeah. So
okay, all right.
It was a good sort of like in the moment, totally random.
Tell me something. Tell me something. How many of your views have changed since the Great Debate days? A little bit.
I don't know.
What about the stuff that me and you used to go back and forth with? Has any of those things changed?
But you literally have to ask me like specifically.
I don't want to do it because then I can open up a can of worms that I don't want to go into. So you're gonna have to try to remember.
I guess based. Okay, I can self-reflect on the last 5 years as a Christian. I guess my views have had a lot of not change, more like upgrading and refinement and
Gnostic beliefs that you had, because I used to accuse you of being a Gnostic. I think.
Did you? I don't know.
Yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, you tried to argue with me about the planets and things like that. As a matter of fact, I think I was borderline calling you a Judaizer, I think, to a certain degree or another. So, and considering you like the Gnostics, like that John was actually dealing with about Jesus' physical body and all of that. So I don't know how much of that has changed, though. So that was back in the Great Debate days, SJ. So this is like.
Yeah, you two have been around for so long. It's so funny because I'm kind of new, and I think Nathan's kind of new too. For people in the chat, people really want to know where you've been, Rob. Like Flash Gordon saying, "Where have you been?" I was meaning to ask Modern Day Debate to invite you on, but I kept forgetting. So some people didn't realize you actually have been running this Sentinel Apologetics channel. It's a pretty big channel. You guys should go join it. Actually, I'm going to put links to all of your channels in there if I haven't yet. I think I have links to all of yours except for Mr. Parker. If you've got a link, I'll need to add that. So.
All right. So Nathan Thompson, if you're an agnostic atheist, right? You believe that we can't know whether or not God exists?
I'm not an agnostic atheist.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
Yeah, sorry. So I'm agnostic, but I don't take that to be the position that no one can know. It's just a personal claim where I'm sort of withholding judgment about basically metaphysics.
Okay. All right. All right.
I describe myself as like a non-realist Christian, which means that I don't think the important questions. I don't think the God of metaphysics really exists, or maybe I don't know, or that's the thing I'm skeptical about.
You're seeking. You're seeking.
I don't know. I wouldn't mean that in the same way I think you'd mean it. Like I think you'd view that maybe from like a sort of Calvinist position, right?
No. Not from. I'm not a Calvinist. No. In the sense that you're still learning and you're still trying to find yourself and figure out what your position is. That's all I'm saying. I'm not giving you any type of title or anything like that. Like
yeah, in a lot of sense. But I suppose what I object to in that is it sort of implies that there is this this final truth point that I've not yet reached, and so my current position is like inferior to some other position. And I mean, it could be, but I just think it kind of frames it wrong. Like there's nothing inherently wrong about my current position. I might stay here. But.
All right.
And I just want to also say he's actually Nathan Ormond, not Nathan Thompson. I think Nathan Thompson is somebody who gets on modern day debates. There is somebody called Nathan Thompson, just to make sure anyone knows.
Nathan Ormond. I apologize for getting your name wrong.
It's all good.
All right.
So the big question that we were going to address today is, does God exist? And right now we've got 3 Christians and 2 non-Christians in the group here making these cases. And so that's what we've been doing, just so that people just join.
The title is it God dead or?
Is God dead? Yeah, I was trying to pull it on Nietzsche.
Oh, okay. yeah.
Well, in order for him to be dead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Honestly, I'm looking at Mr. Parker's icon, and I can't help but think of those 2 black holes as being the nostrils of a pig. So
that's what I thought. See, I thought that the 3 black holes. I thought there was 3 black holes. One was a nose. I thought it was an animal too.
I thought it was toast or something, or a bagel or something. I don't know.
A bagel.
It's like a bagel.
Yeah, actually, you're right. That could be 3.
Because that's what I thought it was, like an animal. Like at the very bottom, you can kind of see a mouth. Did you guys know that that's why they make one of the reasons why car makers make cars like they do, where they have 2 headlights, is because people have this appreciation of something kind of like the human face. So a lot of times you try to make a face out of something. So automobiles, if you look at them, a lot of times if you look at the front grille, you're going to see the 2 lights, everything about it, 2 lights, the nose, the grill.
You're talking about pareidolia, then. So no, I'm not. Go with like the classic atheist kind of arguments and things. So,
yeah, it's interesting.
But you see, an image like that, just for the sake of speaking from a scientific context, the significance of 2 black holes merging, right? I mean, think about it. These are the most devastating things in existence. Mm-hmm. And we have in a Milky Way a giant black hole in the center that makes the Milky Way revolve around and all that. So we have these grand things in the universe that exist. And then in our own local sense, like the atoms in my hand, right? And then the fine structure constant that makes the laws of nature function the way they do and the way the cells move around. And like to me, this any notion of God, like let's put aside the localization of God, which is in the Christian theology is Jesus. So just have him as an abstract idea. I can't help but think that to be completely illogical. The grand cosmic scale of things seems, for example, there's 2 black holes and so on. I can't help. So the notion of no God, right, that governs that is harder to believe than a notion of a God or something keeping this in motion. So that's sort of, I guess, an emotional response. But I'd like Nathan or Mr. Parker to sort of, how would you in an atheistic context reflect on that photo?
I guess the way I reflect on this photo is the impressive feats of human beings being able to capture such a things like to imagine what it would actually look like, two black holes merging, or what a neutron star would actually look like. What would Venus look like without its clouds? Like these impressive feats of imagery and looking beyond our planet ourselves is an impressive human feat. I see it as like the grandness in our view is because we ourselves are viewing it, I guess. That's how I view it.
I have a quick question for those of you out there that are not flat earthers, the people that believe that the earth is round. I believe the earth is round, by the way. Quick question. I think a couple of weeks ago, I think, was it last week or was it the week before that you was able to see the moon and you was able to see Mars like right next to each other? I don't know if you guys live in the New Jersey or the New York area or whatever, but you was able to see the moon and you was able to see Mars like right next to each other. Isn't it possible to look through a telescope and see that, like, you know, that Mars is round and is super far away and could not possibly be in our atmosphere or whatever? Because that's what flat earthers teach. Flat earthers teach that that these planets and the moons and everything are all in our atmosphere, which is ridiculous. But you know,
yeah, I don't touch flat earthers because
I know that. I think that's modern day debate has. In fact, it used to be Non Sequitur hosted a lot of flat Earth debates, and then it sort of moved over to modern day debate, and so he hosts a wide variety of debate topics.
Yeah, he wanted me to go on there and defend Trump. He wanted me to go in there and be a Trump supporter versus somebody who was a Biden supporter. I said, I don't support either one of them. So, nope.
Well, actually, what was interesting, he actually had just to mention this, he had Skylar Fiction on against a black guy on does racism exist? And it was interesting. Skylar was saying, yes, it does. And the black guy was saying no. And so it was kind of it exists. I should say systemic racism. I think that's what they were focusing on. And so that was an interesting debate.
Who comes up with this stuff?
I don't know where he came up with that. So, I mean, I definitely think racism absolutely does exist. It's a question of, is it systemic? We definitely have examples. I can look through our legal system. There's tons of examples in businesses, unfortunately.
Who comes up with this stuff, man? I'm not going back on modern day debate anyway, so it's all good.
So anyway, I think we have probably about 5 more minutes or so till it's 6, and I've got to get my kids. I'm bringing them. My husband and I are bringing them to go do some basketball tonight.
Oh man,
we got this.
Nathan and I in the private discussion just got juicy.
Oh, let me see this here. Let's take.
Oh yeah, let's keep going.
No. You need to go, SJ. I don't want to hold you up on anything. But
I got a few minutes though. We got a little bit.
G-Man's disappeared.
Oh wait, G-Man. Maybe he'll pop back in here.
I don't know if you want to touch on that, Nathan. But
I quoted Pascal twice there, I suppose.
You sorry, what?
I quoted Pascal twice there. So the first one, the eternal silence of these infinite spaces terrifies me. This is Pascal's reflections on sort of an encroaching mechanistic view of the universe and the vastness and the apparent absence of God within that. But then the thing that keeps Pascal going, that they find sewn into his jacket when he dies, is obviously this experience that he has. Like fire, God of Jacob, not God of the philosophers. And so in that, what I see is essentially like a non-cognitive-ist version of religion. This is why I think the metaphysics of it has been detached by modern science, but we still live in the phenomenal reality. So, okay, we don't have the noumenal, whatever. That's fine because we still fundamentally are confronted by existence. And I think that's kind of what you were saying before. I think that's what Pascal's expressing in his, and I think that is the Hebrew conception of God more than the Greek conception of God, which is all the contingency argument, kalam argument, moral syllogisms and stuff. It's not that. It's emotivism. It's non-realism is where Jesus' ethic is where, and that's my current view anyway.
Wait, just quickly. When you introduced Jesus there in that last bit, sort of slightly expand on that.
Sure. So I guess so. So again, there's a whole. I don't want it to turn into a red herring because I feel like as soon as I say anything about what I think about things, it might get picked on and whatnot. But that my view of the Bible is that it's fundamentally a human text but inspired. Okay. Now, what does inspiration mean? Probably something different than it means to you. Like I think Plato's writings are also inspired, for example. And when we're looking at the Gospels, I think we're looking at four human descriptions of an event, and they're also reading back theologically into it, and so forth. So we have a quest for the historical Jesus. What were Jesus' actual teachings in between these four imperfect sort of witnesses of the event? And I think we find in Jesus' ethic almost like for example, condemnation of the Pharisees, a condemnation of like a metaphysics and a religion of love, a religion of affirmation for life. And I think that's the important thing that I take from from what I see, the Jesus I see in the Gospels. And yeah.
So here's just quickly, here's a question for you. Hypothetically, let's just say everything you see in the Bible is like valid, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then you see, because this is a question in my own private time. Like, I'm a Christian, I honor Jesus, I give praise to him. The more I learn, the more I write, the more I'm just blown away. But then the human, so I guess you could say that's the spiritual, there's an intellectual dryness to it, but at the same time a submission as as Paul says, I'm a slave of Christ, so I just acknowledge and give him praise and so on. But then there's the outside that, there's that human nature part of me that sort of, it's not a bad thing, but it's like a little tease. My brain sort of teases myself, and then I tell myself. So coming back to the black holes, that carpenter, from Nazareth, he's the one that designed the universe to do that. You see, that's the other side of the coin that I think about as well. And so I guess if I was to ask you the same question, like, okay, Nathan, say if all this is true, and this guy 2,000 years ago, this carpenter, is indeed the Logos, that those black holes are the reason why they exist is because of him. Would you then follow Pascal's terrified statement, or would you? So, like, where would you fit? Would you go, oh, thank goodness, now I can become a Christian, and you don't need to worry about anything? Or would you be equally terrified, even in that sense? Like, you're terrified either you're an atheist or you're terrified even though you're a Christian. It's like you're terrified in both camps, so to speak. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think in terms of what Pascal's saying there, I think Pascal did believe, that God's the architect of the universe. But I think it's through modern eyes we can look back at what Pascal said, and with anthropology, we know, for example, we can sort of say, oh, hang on, isn't this interesting when we view this through the lens of emotivism about religion? So that's and then I follow that train of thought through Kant, through Nietzsche, and through Wittgenstein, who I believe debunks what Nietzsche says about God being dead and gives God back in a way. But I
just want to say something real quick. I'm gonna head out. My internet is unstable. It keeps going in and out. I'll see you guys later. Great conversation.
Good seeing you.
All right. God bless.
God bless you, man.
Yeah. I guess if I took that, it would be very difficult for me to take that that realist view, because I think what Pascal is expressing, because he says, I cannot forgive Descartes, because what he's done is he's turned God into this first cause, turned God into just this insignificant side note that maybe sets the first thing off, and then the rest of it's just mechanism, and God doesn't play any role in personal life. And I agree that I think that's what modern science shows us, but I also think that's true. Like, I can't, I think even if we say that God's the architect, it doesn't give us the kind of God of the Bible who's personally involved in lives. And so, I mean, you could say, well, he came down once as Jesus, but not have all these sort of, oh, you know, the laws or these it accounts for these brute facts that sort of, you know, I just don't think, and I think that's the conclusion Pascal's drawing with that. He's saying that's why he really is, you know, he's upset with what Descartes' done, because he's like, well, Descartes minimalized God to this, you know, this role. He's separated the mind out because he's scared of the mechanistic kind of encroachments on things. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered your question very well, but
yeah, I'm also trying to be respectful to SJ here.
yeah.
Oh no worries. I like having, this is fun. I like having you guys on. I like having this open discussion today. This has been a lot of fun.
Thank
so
you.
It's we've given as Christians, I'll just say we've given people at least something to think about with respect to Jesus and the cosmology and that nice little picture that Mr. Parker has there. And then I guess as the atheist or agnostics might say, well, we've given you guys something to think about.
I guess.
Well, just to sort of, oh, Miss Wild, were you going to say something?
Yeah, no, I was.
Okay, so I'll this will be my last comment, and then Nate, you can make a final comment on that. So, for example, Hugh Ross will say that when you look at that black hole there, that's the result of this thing called dark energy, dark matter, that, you know, the expansion rate of the universe. So then, because of the way the laws are, over time, these things called black holes can then form and do their stuff. But Hugh Ross will point out, which ironically even secular astronomers will point out, that the fine-tuning parameter for the dark energy expansion rate is like 10 to the 72 times or something greater in complexity than the most complex thing that humans have made, and that's the gravity telescope, I think it's called. Like, it's a device that's able to measure gravity, and that in itself is a complexity of up to like 10 to the 30 magnitude or something. So the point is, you have dark energy of 10 to the 100 plus magnitude in its calculation. So hence 70 orders of magnitude greater is the complexity of dark energy. So the point is, if humans are designers of this complex device, and there's a lot of investment and creativity that's gone into it, then by analogy, the universe is 70 orders greater than that at a minimum base. And then on top of that, if you want to go into M theory and multiple dimensions and so on, then we're going into this, and and this is something Pascal had no idea of in his day, but in my opinion, because of the math and string theory and so on, it terrifies me. Like, it's like, are you kidding me? Like, this is ridiculous. How scarily complex this universe is, this reality actually is. And so if there's no God, it terrifies me. But then if there is God, if he doesn't have a name to him, that sort of terrifies me. But then if it becomes quite personal, in this case, Jesus, right? It's like, okay, I can have a type of comfort, like a comforting sort of, like kind of like Abraham and God before Sodom and Gomorrah. You know how they're having a discussion, they're shoulder to shoulder. It's like two men having a discussion, but here's the creator of the universe having a discussion with Abraham, but at the same time, he's come to his level, sort of thing. So I'm perceiving him in Jesus like that. But then I also have that added question. It's like, but either way, even though you've come down to my level, you are the creator of those black holes. So what I'm saying is, as a Christian, I find a lot of comfort and joy in the theology that I write about and I talk about. But then I can't help but be human at the same time and just kind of be at a little bit of a terrified reflection that, yeah, reality is amazing. But at the same time, you and I are so fragile. We're so mortal. And in the sense, the universe is so hostile to life. But at the same time, it's so grand. It's so beautiful. And then this particular person's the creator of it, which is even more amazing and terrifying. It's like it's all these things mixed in one big bag. Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, right? And I think I distill it into two parts in my mind. So one of those is like, is that metaphysical realist? Like if I was to really try and extract out what you're saying there, there'd be some sort of fine tuning argument in there, which I'm sure I probably wouldn't agree with the conclusion with. But if I agree with if the other part of it, which you're saying, which is this is how we experience the world, and then there's an ethical stance towards life where we behave that way. That's the part I do agree with. If that helps you understand where
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, I like what you said there, Rob. I've decided I'm going to capture that little short portion of the video and make another little mini video, nuggets of wisdom, because I like that. Of course, I know I have my biases. Obviously, I'm a Christian. But so I want to say thank you, everybody, for coming in here. Do you guys want to share what you're working on now, or how people can find? I mean, you can find you, because I'm going to put you in the chats, but other ways that people can contact you or what you're working on. It'd be great to know.
Go for it.
You go, Rob.
I was just saying I'm still writing Mark, so I'm up to end of chapter 5 now. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I've got to read that. I got to finish reading that. You sent that to me, the beginning of it, and I loved it, how it opened up. So when are you guys?
You can find me at Twitter at the Mr. Parker. Mr. has to be spelled out, like the title, whatever. I have 2 videos on my channel. They're not that much, really. One video is just me trying to fix my headphones and my mic, and it just didn't end well. But yeah, I plan to have all kinds of discussion on my channel, and I'm on everyone's channel every so often, so I'll be everywhere.
Great, thank you. I want to say you said you're kind of young, and my son, I have a son who's 15 who routinely gets 5,000 and 6,000 people watching his channel, which is basically playing games, video games, and a bunch of people on a Discord thing talking about it. And I think that kind of depresses me, to be honest. It's totally awful. So, Nate, what are you working on, or how can people find you?
Yeah, so I've got the YouTube channel called Digital Gnosis, and I'm also on Twitter by the same name. Generally, I'm interviewing guests, so I'm sending out a few emails for various guests to come on, philosophers, psychologists, theologians, and stuff like that. And also, I'm open to having conversations with anyone who would like to as well, so you can get in touch with me if you'd be interested in that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming in here. I hope that you'll like and subscribe, and definitely go subscribe to all of these people's channels and the people who were also in here earlier. So it's great having everybody on. And that's that. So I want to say, how should I end it? Jesus is Lord. So
Amen.
I want to say, have a blessed day, everybody. So end the broadcast.